Hello Year 5 and welcome to your reading lesson for today. So today we're going to carry on and look at some more prediction, okay? So we're going to use the evidence in the text to help us predict what might be happening, but also using our retrieval skills as well as identifying keywords in the questions that are going to help us. So we're going to look at some vocabulary today. So you will have page 24 and 25 in front of you. Okay, now this is the end of our chapter 4 that we're going to be reading today. So on page 24 it says, hand out to tentatively stroke. So the one I'm going to pick up on today is tentatively. Now tentatively is an adverb. So it's a word that's going to describe how the verb was done. Okay, so this is 4 syllables, tentatively, tentatively. Okay, now we tend to define this as when you do something with very little confidence. So you might be hesitant about something. You might be doing it in a way that means you're not sure. So you might have a look at your maths work for today and be a little bit tentative about doing it. You might not have the confidence to be able to feel like you can do that work. So you're going to do it rather tentatively. So you'll be holding off a little bit. So let's put it into a sentence for you to understand. The police stepped tentatively towards the open door. Now if you think about it, if the police are going to investigate and they see an open door, there's the potential that could be that maybe the person they're looking for is inside. Now, they could be dangerous. So they're going to be very careful about the way they approach that door so that they don't come into any surprises. They're going to approach it tentatively. Now, synonyms, it could be that you do it hesitantly. The police stepped hesitantly towards the open door. The police stepped carefully. The police stepped cautiously. So anything that's going to suggest you're going to do something very slowly and very carefully because you're not quite sure about something. So obviously the opposite words for this, so the antonym is to do something very boldly or very confidently. So it's the opposite of being hesitant. So rather than not being hesitant, you go for it. You don't stop, you don't think, and you go for it. And you're very confident and very bold in what you do. So that's one of the words we're going to look at that you'll come across in our reading for today. We're also going to look at this other word, okay, on page 25. I think it's on one of the very last lines of the page, and it's dismal death caps. Okay, note the alliteration there of dismal death caps. So what we're going to look at is dismal. Okay, now dismal is an adjective. So it's the way we describe something. Now this word is only 2 syllables, dismal, so dismal. And it's when we describe something as being awful or terrible. Now we can use dismal in different ways. So we could use dismal in a way of describing how someone feels, which I know is when we've looked at this in French, when we've looked at ça va mal. When we're not very happy about something, we're very sad, very gloomy and very upset. But today we're going to look at this word in the context of where we're describing an object of something. So, for example, he shuddered as he watched his team's dismal performance. So if we use our synonyms there, it could be that he shuddered as he watched the team's bad performance, their poor performance, awful performance, pitiful, drab or dull performance. So he's basically describing their performance as not being very good. Okay, it's very boring, it's very dull, it's bad, it's very poor. Now the opposite of that is going to be, very bright, very cheery, very bold. So it could be their amazing performance, their awesome performance, very boring, very bold, very bright, very cheery. So that's going to be one of our words that we're also going to come across in our chapters today. Now, as usual, if you would like to pause the video and have a go at reading it on your own, then that's fine. I won't be offended that you don't want to listen to my amazing reading voice. And you can then skip along to the end. Now, we only have 2 pages to read today, and we're not going to focus on any work specifically for those 2 pages because your challenge is going to be to do some prediction based on the next chapter. So have the 2 pages up in front of you. You can skip this part of the video and read it yourself, or you can follow along with me. So I'm going to start from that first top line there. So here, Sorrel looked around, raising an eyebrow. Yes, here, the boy glared at her. For now, anyway. But if you like, he added, looking at the dragon, if you like, you can stay here for the time being. Now, you might remember that this little boy is the boy that they've come across when they've gone and snuck into this building. So they've come face to face with this boy, and now he's having a conversation with them. Thank you, said Firedrake. That's extremely kind of you. What's your name? The boy pushed his hair awkwardly back from his forehead. My name's Ben. What about you? This, said Dragon, nuzzling Sorrel gently in the stomach, is Sorrel, and I am Firedrake. Firedrake? That's a good name. Ben put his hand out tentatively to stroke the dragon's neck, as if he feared Firedrake would disappear the moment he touched. So you can see the word tentatively there. He's gone very, very gently, very cautiously, because he's not quite sure what the dragon might do if he actually touches him. Casting the boy a suspicious glance, we've looked at suspicious, we know to pull this kind of face. Sorrel went over to the hatch and looked out. Time to go and look for rats, she said. You, human, can you tell me where the Dockland warehouses are? Ben nodded. Less than 10 minutes' walk from here. But how are you going to get there without being captured or stuffed and put on show in a museum? You can leave that to me, growled Sorrel. Firedrake put his head between the two of them, looking anxious. You mean it's dangerous for her? He asked the boy. Ben nodded. Of course. Well, looking the way she does, I bet she won't get 10 metres from here. The first little old lady to spot her will call the police. Police? Asked Firedrake, baffled. What kind of thing is police? I know what the police are, muttered Sorrel. But I have to reach those warehouses. It's just too bad. She sat down and was about to let herself drop into the dirty canal water when Ben grasped her by the arm. I'll take you there, he said. I'll give you some of my clothes to wear, and then I can smuggle you past somehow. I've been living here a long time. I know all the back alleys. Would you really guide her? Asked Firedrake. How can we ever thank you? Ben went red. Oh, it's nothing, really, he muttered. Sorrel was not looking so enthusiastic. Human clothes, she growled. Yuck! Dismal death caps. I shall stink of human beings for weeks. But she put the clothes on all the same. Okay, so let's have a look at what it means to predict. So we've done prediction for one of our lessons. Now, there's only two types of questions that might come up in SAT papers when you do them in Year 6 that are based on prediction questions. So we're going to have a look at them in a minute. So to predict what might happen from details in the text or what details are implied sometimes focuses around not only retrieving but also inferring as well. Where it says implied, that's where details are given, but not all of the information is given. So you almost have to kind of read around the work a little bit. So it means to make a logical and reasonable guess about what could happen next. It's not just you guessing and making up a random part of the story, but it's where you're using what you already know from the story and what you know from your background knowledge to make a reasonable guess. Okay, so a bit like what we do in science, when we make a hypothesis, which is an educated guess, that's based on your knowledge. Same goes for prediction. Based on what we've read so far, that's going to help you predict and have a reasonable guess at what could happen next. So you have to look at what's already happened, what the characters might already hint is coming up as well. So that's looking at the language from the characters, but also what has been implied by the author's use of language. So this is what we looked at for the author's intent at the end of last week. So if someone walks into the room with a cake that's lit with candles at a birthday party, what logically would you think is going to happen next? Well, clearly you're at a birthday party, which means that cake going to belong to the birthday person. So if it's the birthday boy, that cake's going to go to the birthday boy. Well, from experience, I know that that child is then going to blow those candles out and make a wish for their birthday. Equally, if you didn't know that you were at a birthday party and you saw something that had cake with candles in it, you know that's going to be for some form of celebration. So that's using your knowledge and background information to almost predict what could happen next. So let's explore two different types of questions. So you'll be given the give your opinion type question. So this is sometimes where you'll be given a multiple choice answer, but it's a slight trick one because there's no correct right or wrong answer. So although you might be given multiple choice questions in a paper, that doesn't necessarily mean that your answers are either going to be right or wrong. But what you'll need to do is when you do make your selection, so it could be right for all three of these examples, you need to be able to fully explain why you chose that answer. So what you're really being marked for is the response that you give. Okay, now here you can see this is a 3-mark question. So this usually means that you have to have at least 2 points that you write down to explain your answer. Now, those 2 points usually will have to be given with some evidence from the text. So I think for this question, do you think Martine will change her behaviour? So I think Martine will change her behaviour because in the text it says ... This means ... So if you were to give a couple of those examples, your answer can't be wrong because as long as you back it up with evidence, that still justifies your opinion because no one can have a right or wrong opinion, remember? Now, if we look at this type of question, this is your logical next step. So this is a bit like that birthday question I just asked you. Using what you already know, what could happen next? So this is where you need to look at what's already happened. So you need to reread the work in front of you, look at the author's intent, look at the vocabulary. Are there any hints that your character has told you? And then you need to predict what might happen next. So your answer will usually include a causal conjunction. So we've looked at causal conjunctions before. So usually I think that they will ... because ... could be therefore, as well as. So this is where we use our conjunctions to support us. Now this is only a 2-mark question here, but you have to use evidence from the paragraph to support your prediction. So if you say, I think this is going to happen next, you need to explain because it says in the text, and then you copy a small quote from your work. Okay. So what you are going to do is we're going to have a look and explore these different types of questions. So although there's 2 types of question formats of where you'd be either asked to give your opinion or make a logical prediction for the next one, these are the type of questions they could be phrased as. So based on what you've read, what do you think might happen next? Do you think that this character will change their behaviour in the future, and why? So you're always giving evidence when making a prediction. How would someone you know react if they were in this situation? So that's using your knowledge. So that's your opinion of what you think might happen. What do you think is likely to happen when? So this is where you're making a prediction based on what you've read so far. So you would need to use evidence to support your answer. And what clues does the front cover give us about the content of this book? Okay, so again, that's using the evidence. And how do you think this story might end? So that's where you're making a logical suggestion about how the story might end. So your task for today is to reread the whole of chapter 4 to refresh your memory of what's just happened. Now, I'm not going to give you any of those types of questions because we've only read a small amount today, but I think it's a good point to be able to stop and allow you to predict before we start a new chapter, especially as we don't know what kind of danger or harm these 2 animals, Fire Drake and Solar, might come to now they've come across a human. Because we know from the beginning of the story that they don't like humans. So something big could happen here that's going to change the direction of this entire book. So I'm not going to give you any specific questions, but based on what you've read, I would like to write 3 different prediction paragraphs about what is going to happen next. Okay? Now, your paragraphs don't need to be long. They just need to be a few sentences to explain what you think is going to happen. But you need to write 3 different scenarios of what could happen. Now, you're going to need to use evidence from the text. So we know they're about to embark on a journey. 3 different things could happen, or even 2 different things could happen. One, they could make it there safely on time, because we've looked at them getting ready to go out. But also, Ben mentioned about a lady potentially picking them up, calling the police. They could be stuffed or put in a museum. So based on the evidence, I might have just given you a few clues, I want you to predict further beyond chapter 4, using those clues to help you about what could happen next. Now, like I've just said, it's important to remember to use evidence from chapter 4 that we've read to be able to support your answers. Okay, so reread the chapter and write 3 different scenarios predicting what you think could potentially happen in chapter 4, but also use your knowledge of the previous 3 chapters. Like I've just said, we know that they don't like humans. So this could be a very different situation for them to be in, especially as Fire Drake has never been this close to a human being before. So use everything you know from chapters 1 to 3, reread chapter 4 and have a go at writing your prediction paragraphs. And then when we come to our lesson tomorrow for reading, we'll see if any of you predicted correctly. Okay, good luck, year 5.